Okay,
But
well,
yeah,
let's start at the very beginning. Tell
okay.
me about yourself, Jeff, in your own time, in your own way.
Tell you about myself. That's a tough question.
It's annoyingly open, but I'd like you to sort of tell the people all of the ways that you reach out and speak about these topics of voluntarism and anarchism.
Well, I have a podcast, as you know, and actually you're going to be going live on that today on Anarchast, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it's been really interesting because I just started. It was really interesting because it was a couple of years ago, and back then, and it's sort of funny to say that was like 2 years ago. A lot of things were different. The actual idea of anarchy was still not widely known. It's still not, but it's really changed in the last few years, and I had a number of people tell me that, don't call it anarchist because people are scared of anarchists and all that. And I said, we have to stick up for some of these words sometimes. A lot of these words, including the word liberal, has been so skewed over time because liberal used to mean basically libertarian. And now the word liberal, at least in the U.S., means you really like welfare and stealing money from people and giving it to other people. So a lot of these words just get skewed over time. I'm getting a little tired of it, and I figure at some point we have to stand up for some of these words. And I took the word anarchy. I said we just it's such a great word, first of all, and they always try to skew it. I always try to say on the media and the government that anarchy is a terrible thing. It's all about violence and breaking windows and bombs and things like that, but that's totally not the case. That's what the media and the government want you to think, because if people start to actually understand what anarchy is, they won't want government anymore, and that's why they always try to say that's really bad. And of course, I don't know if you saw this movie. That's really hilarious to me. This Purge movie. Have you heard of it?
I heard about it through Lark and Rose. I don't think I could watch it, but yeah, I just think even the trailer for it sounded bad enough.
Yeah, it's truly unbelievable. It's called The Purge Anarchy. And what it is for something like 12 hours once a year, they don't have any government or police, and everyone just goes out and kills each other. Which is what they want you to believe would happen without government and police, because what they want you to think is that only the government and police should be able to go out and kill everybody and rob people. And they want you to have no faith in fellow human beings and humanity, that if there wasn't these people who take half your money every year and who have all kinds of arbitrary rules and laws, and they kidnap millions of people in the U.S. For nothing. If there's no victim, there's no crime. So they're actually kidnapping people, putting them in cages, and somehow they have people thinking, or a lot of people believing, that this is a very civilized way of living, and that it's without that things would be terrible, because there might be some people who might rob you. And so therefore we need to rob every single person in society of about half the money they make every year, just to make sure that that doesn't happen, which makes no sense. But of course the governments run the schools. The governments, most people put their kids into 12 years of indoctrination, and they just keep repeating all these same things. And I don't know if you've seen what's going on in the U.S. I focus a lot on the U.S. because that's really going to be ground zero for what I think is going to be the coming collapse of all of this statism and central banks.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, it's going to. Yeah, don't even worry about it.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Australia, England, it's all going down because too many of us are rising up into our own consciousness.
Yeah, it's not only that, it's going down all on its own, because all these destructive things have built up this gigantic, massive amount of debt now. The total amount of debt of all debt, actually, but it's mostly all government debt. A lot of it, more than half of it is government debt, was $70 trillion in 2007, 2008. In 2013, it was $100 trillion. So it almost doubled in that 5-year period. It is 6 years. I went to government school, so I'm really bad at math. But
you are not bad at math.
I'm not very good at it because whatever. I never really liked the government schools. I didn't go too much, and I never really liked math. But I figured we all have calculators, so what do I need to know how to add and subtract for?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've been watching what's going on, like what they're teaching now in the U.S. schools. They have this thing called Common Core, which is truly unbelievable.
I just saw something on Facebook yesterday about the way they teach subtraction now.
Yeah.
It's such an insanity.
It's
And I
completely
was
insane.
looking at it, I was thinking, that must be a joke, that can't be real. But then somebody said to me, this is what they're doing, they're scrambling the brains, they're saying 2 plus 2 equals 5 ultimately.
Yeah,
I,
if you with Common Core, if it says what's 2 plus 2, you can say 5, but as long as you say it friendly, like very nice, and then everyone gets an A because they tried, and it's hilarious. But even worse than that, and this is where the indoctrination really comes in. Most of these math questions are things like, if Barack Obama, who is the best president of all time and a true hero, this is like pretty much what they say, had 3 eggs, and Abraham Lincoln, the only other person who's better than Barack Obama or just as good as Barack Obama, had 6 eggs. How many eggs would these amazing presidents who we all love and admired have? And then you could just say 30 and just go, but you say it friendly, like 30, thank you very much. And then you get, it's like so beyond ridiculous. I can't believe they're even doing it.
They're teaching you not to dislike Obama and Abraham Lincoln ultimately, aren't they? Or just go along with everybody's niceness because it's all about being happy and nice.
Yeah, like they have all kinds of, outside of the math, they have, like, civil studies or whatever. And they actually literally have, things like, I forget the exact questions, but they're just unbelievable. Things like, it, like I try to think of the question because it was so bizarre. It was something like, if governments, wasn't here, how quickly would you die? Or things like, it's really like outright, like just propaganda, status propaganda about how great it is. And, it's truly unbelievable. And people send their kids for 12 years. Like Vladimir Lenin said, if you give me your child for 4 years, the seed I plant will never be uprooted. And that's quite true. And now they have them for 12 years. And then they go to college, which is mostly status, socialist. If they go to economics, they're going to learn total status economics, which is called Keynesian economics, which is actually all false. Makes no sense whatsoever. It's all about printing money and spreading the wealth, which mostly just goes to the financial elites and gets destroyed by inflation and bureaucracy. But it's just truly unbelievable that many people still actually think these things are valuable, or actually something they should do is actually go to school and get good grades and be obedient. It's truly unbelievable. And what it does is actually takes out all of the creativity out of children, because they're never taught to be very creative in school. You're taught to behave and to respect authority and to memorize the things that you're told to memorize, but you're very rarely taught to be creative. And actually, if you're very creative, usually in the U.S., they'll actually see you as they'll give you all sorts of these, they have all these new disease names, which are actually not diseases, like ADD. He's having trouble concentrating in this indoctrination prison camp. We better drug him up. And the drugs they give him, I've taken some of these drugs at parties, things like Adderall.
I have a lot of friends who take that at parties.
It's basically cocaine.
Yeah.
But cocaine is much healthier because it's natural. This Adderall is a total chemical substance and basically just spins you off into this bizarre, like it's like I did it once and I'm not going to do it again at a party, and it was like, whoa, that was too intense. Like I couldn't even really function. So it's just unbelievable. And there's literally hundreds of thousands or millions of kids on these things now, and no one. Not no one. You brought up the point that a lot of people are starting to awaken, thankfully, and I think it's all mostly thanks to the internet. But a lot of people still don't really realize how terrible all these things are.
Yeah, I was just reading yesterday that nonconformity and creativity are now symptoms for mental illness to be medicated. And I'm in Canberra, the capital of Australia, and I got to tell you, it is so depressing for me here after being in Central America and South America, and just seeing how much everyone in this city conforms to everything, and everything's neat and everything's in place, and it's just revolting how soulless a society can become. And everyone looks uncomfortable in their suits and their clothes and their shoes, and they look miserable wherever they're going, and I probably look miserable too because I'm looking at them. But I can't quite put my finger on what the actual problem is. So I'm apart from being able to describe it as being soulless, and one thing I notice about a lot of the people in these progressive movements of thinking for yourself is that you have retained your soul, but you have to go out on a bit of a limb in some communities. Like for me, I didn't notice how many people had been conforming and, for so long because I've been out of this situation. But yeah, it's something that I'm finding it really hard to deal with. And so when did you start to sort of realize that you were thinking for yourself and it was obviously, you were standing out from a crowd or whatever? Was it really young?
Well, I still don't see myself as being all that different or standing out from the crowd. I hear that a lot, though, so there must be something to it. I think if you're going to pinpoint generally what happened in my life and what led me to thinking the way I think today is I really didn't go to school much. When I was about 11, I got my first personal computer, an Apple II Plus computer. It was actually a clone because we were not a very well-off family in northern Canada. It was free. It was minus 40 almost all the time.
You're my age, Jeff. When I was 11, my dad built a Commodore 64 with a tape player loader. So you were doing
I was so jealous. I was so jealous of my friend who had a Commodore 64, even the VIC-20. The Commodore 64, though, with the cassette tape player, and it had color.
Was that advanced?
Oh, man, I was so jealous, and we couldn't afford one, and actually that turned out to be a good thing, because I don't think Commodore did very well. I don't even know what happened to that. But yeah, I had this Apple II Plus, and we actually ordered it from Vietnam, of all places. My grandfather did, and this actually, my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, but his legacy to me that I've always really, really respected and really think fondly of him for is that he was always into ham radio, which I don't know if you know what ham radio is, but it was basically sort of the internet before the internet. It was all over radio, and these people could talk to each other all around the world. Through these giant towers they had in their backyard, and my grandpa had one of them. So he was into these things. He was on that radio, just talking to people from around the world all day, every day. He had two what they called skeds, one at 10 in the morning, one at 4. And it was kind of funny because I overheard the conversations. It was mostly just like, hey, what's the weather like where you are? And then the guy would go, sunny. And be like, oh, very interesting. It was really not very in-depth conversations. But still, the point was that was sort of the internet before the internet. And I think he saw in me that I was when I first heard about computers, and of course there was no internet in 1980, I was enthralled. And so he ordered a Unitron, it was called. It was an Apple II Plus clone for Vietnam. We had to build it ourselves in his ham shack, which is another ham radio term. And then once I got on that, I was just enthralled. I was like, this is so much better than all this crap I have to do in school and all that. I want to know this stuff. This is going to be that you can do anything on these things. And back then, you couldn't do anything on them. They were so very basic. But I just saw
a picture of a kitten.
Oh, no, forget about it. When I first got it, you couldn't, oh man, it was so very basic. But just even typing text was exciting to me. And so I really almost stopped going to school, or if I did go to school, I'd just sit in the back and read my computer magazines and stuff like that. And then by high school, I was so into it that I basically stopped going to school. I'd go just for the test to make my mom happy, and I'd read the textbook like the morning before, and I'd pass the test, and just to make her happy. But I really didn't go much. And like I said, if I did, I wasn't paying much attention, which got me into a lot of trouble for not, conforming. And then as well, because I was on that computer, and I still am quite a computer nerd, although I'm not like a programmer hacker anymore as much as I used to be. I'm more just into anything to do with the internet or computer. I just love being on it. I've never spent a day of my life since I was 10 probably without 8 hours on a computer. I'm just always on a computer, including right now. I'm sitting in front of a computer monitor. And because of that, I didn't even watch the nightly television programming. And they call it programming, of course, for a reason, because it's more programming, and it's mostly propaganda, especially the news. News, I use with hand quotes, because especially in Canada, where they have the CBC, which is the government news channel, and people actually watch it. I can't believe it. And so I didn't get any of that. So I've always been on computers, and back then, before the internet, was bulletin board systems. And that was basically the internet, but it was very, you had to call someone's house to get on to talk to them, but you could do it. So I was just always doing what my grandfather used to do, which was just talking to people from around the world, getting information and stuff like that. So because of that, I've never really paid much attention to what I guess most people have been, unfortunately, subject to, which is just total brainwashing most of the day and most of the night with propaganda. And so, I hear that a lot, that I think differently. And I don't think of myself as thinking differently. I think everyone else is crazy, but I don't think I think differently. But I guess I do, probably because of that, because I just haven't gone through all that indoctrination that most people have gone through.
And when you were a kid, were you like a troubled child, a naughty kid, or were you just a nice kid who just who did the minimum you had to do to sort of keep everyone happy in the sense of the schooling?
I think I was a generally fairly typical kid. I had my issues. I had some problems. I would get into some fights. I was kind of angry. But that's very normal where I'm from in northern Canada. You just grew up in this environment where there's hockey, which has fighting in all the games, and then you drive around and it's minus 30 and everyone's angry and there's always like road rage and you're just angry because you live mostly as a slave and you're stopping at a stoplight in the middle of the night. There's no cars on the road and you have to just sit there like a slave and everyone's just very angry. So I had some issues, but at the same time I was a fairly normal, I hate to use that word, but a fairly typical sort of kid. I also, I was very into what I was into, which is the same way I still am today. When I get into something, I really get into it. And right now, for the last 10 years, I've been into liberty and anarchy and understanding the concepts and how it could make the world a better place. And that to me is what is so exciting, is I see the potential of what these ideas of getting rid of the state, getting rid of central banks, and the world would just be fantastic. It wouldn't be perfect, and of course it's never perfect. This is the world, and you actually don't want it to be perfect. We talked about that on our Anarchast, is, we kind of need some of these bad things to happen, or else we won't even know what good things are. So it's fine to have, bad things sometimes. It keeps us sort of on our toes and interested in things. But I just get so excited at the potential. If people have no idea of the potential, if we actually allowed free enterprise and voluntary transactions to happen, the world would bloom. There would be basically no unemployment. Most of the unemployment is caused by minimum wage laws, caused by welfare, it's caused by all the destruction of the economy by the central banks. So there'd be really no unemployment. Plus, and on top of that, people really wouldn't need to work too much because there'd be so much prosperity that they wouldn't have to do a lot of work to actually be very prosperous. And I'm not saying that that's good. I'm not saying that work is bad or good. Whatever you want to do is fine with me as long as you don't hurt anybody. But what I'm saying is that you see a lot in the media nowadays. I just saw one from Bill Gates, who I really don't like very much. I think he's doing a lot of terrible things, in my opinion. But he came out recently. I wish he'd actually just shut up a little bit, because he talks way too much about stuff he doesn't know anything about. I hate these guys who, basically I built this giant company, which is awesome, great. And then, so now I'm an expert on everything. So let's go vaccinate African kids. It's like, what? Do you even know what vaccine? I think he's actually might be doing it on purpose. But anyway.
Oh yeah, I'm starting to think so myself. I must admit, it's hard to believe, but when there's 48,000 children damaged in one vaccine lot in 1 year in India, you have to recognise that they're not getting a few problems and going, whoa, we should check this out. We should just test this a little more. They're just going, no, keep selling the vaccines.
Push it. Does he not get this information?
It's not like they're white kids.
Yeah, no, there's something very devious about what he's doing. But the one thing that I was my point was that he recently came out with another of his things, and people listened to him, and he said, robots are going to replace most jobs in the next 50 years. And everyone was just in shock, oh, this will be the worst place, the earth will be just a disaster. There'll be no jobs. It's like, well, in actuality, if robots were really that advanced that they could do everything, then we wouldn't really need to do very much. And it'd be so much cheaper, obviously, or else you wouldn't use robots. So everything would be very cheap. Everything would have access to lots of stuff.
We could pursue and develop our own talents.
Yeah.
And we could actually make those talents something that we could creatively sell and exchange with each other, and we'd all be doing the thing that we love the most and we're best at.
Yeah, in the U.S., there's so much propaganda about jobs, and you have to go to school to get a good job. Jobs in general are kind of a weird concept. You should want to be productive. You should want to do things that other people want, so you also can get things from them that you want. That's fine. But this idea of a job is so ingrained in Americans that that's all they think about is, I've got to go to 16 or 20 years of school, waste 20 years of time learning mostly nothing, and actually mostly false information, which is even worse. So you have to actually spend a number of decades after that actually unlearning all the propaganda. Exactly. So you basically wasted 30 or 40 years.
You've been steered down this road to be sort of empty-headed in regards to our true history as well as everything else. Yeah,
I was just thinking about history the other day. So many people just think that what is in those history books, and every country has different history books, is total fact. Like, they don't even question it.
I know, and now that we're such a global community, I wonder how we can keep up with this crap. Like, my parents were watching another Hitler documentary the other night. And I mean, in Australia, we get 3 Hitler documentaries a week. And it's like we are still trying to convince ourselves that there are a few evildoers, you know? And, if you look into Hitler's bloody doctor travelled with him more than his wife. And Hitler's doctor was giving him 5 grams of speed in the morning and 5 grams of downers at night. So when you see him in those parades going, he's off his face like a friend at a party on a gram of whatever. It's like people aren't actually like that unless they're pushed and puppeteered and everything else.
I noticed in those videos he does look like he's walking a little fast. I thought that was always like something to do with the translation from film to video, but maybe.
No, it's something else. So, who did you start to talk to when you started formulating these ideas, which are very different from the mainstream? Who did you tell first, and what were their reactions?
Well, first of all, the first person who really told me and opened my eyes to a lot of what I talk about now today was Doug Casey. And he's still a good friend and mentor of mine. And he's an amazing guy. He's actually really doing amazing work behind the scenes, just spreading the cause of liberty around the world and trying to get people together. For example, he's got an entire anarchist little community in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he puts them all together. He finds amazing. He's always just connecting people and doing great things. As far as who did I first tell about these ideas, I really get too much really bad feedback from people, but I do remember telling my parents a few of these ideas, and they were pretty shocked. And I just thought that was weird. I'll give you one example that I thought was really strange. I was sitting down with my dad, and this is about 2007 probably, and I just figured out a lot of what had really happened during 9/11. I'd been researching it for years and years in my spare time. I was just so fascinated. I was like, what they say happened is impossible. So
that's the conspiracy theory. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, it's just not possible for 3 buildings to get knocked down by 2 planes at free fall speed into their own footprint, just by 2 fires in 2 of the buildings. If that were the case, if you were actually
they blew away those buildings.
They turned into dust. They
didn't even crumble. They just blew across the bay. 3 stories left out of 120 or something.
Yeah, like, I don't know why these demolition companies don't just set off jet fuel fires on the top floors of some of these high-rises, because it obviously just, the whole building just turns to dust. It's just amazing. Like,
you don't even have to clean
anything
up, really.
Well, you have to, there's all that lava underneath that lasts for a few months, that burns without any oxygen, which is, that's sort of a bad side effect of it.
For weeks.
But, yeah.
But then again, they could utilize that as well for something, like that heat. They could, I don't know, heat the whole of New York with that. Just
Yeah, maybe some sort of geothermal energy. Yeah, you can do a lot of amazing things with this new technology of jet fuel, just turning buildings into dust. But anyway, to get back to my point, I said a lot of this stuff to my dad. And my dad actually stopped me at one point. I was giving him just facts, there's so much facts that it was all BS. And at one point he just stopped me and said, "Hey, I don't want to hear anymore." And I was like really surprised by that. I said, "Why? This is fascinating." And he goes, "No, I just don't want to know." And I was like, "Whoa, are you my real dad? Because I want to know everything. Like, why wouldn't you want to know?" And I actually thought about it afterwards. And he's sort of grown up very indoctrinated. He worked all his life for the state, for a state telephone company. My mom worked her whole life for the state medical care, the Canadian horrible socialized medical system, which is terrible. And now he's on a pension from the government. And he gets his government social security, whatever they call it in Canada. And so I think to him, he's getting close to 70 now. And I think he just doesn't want to think about how wrong a lot of the things that he thought were right were during his life.
Everyone prefers to lick the hand that feeds them, don't they? Whereas, you know what? If I have a dog and it bites my hand, I don't get rid of the dog. I just, learn how to sort of become friends with it sooner or later. People drive me crazy. And when it's your own parents, it can be devastating because you feel so alone, you feel like you really aren't their actual, offspring. Because
I've never thought
how
that
can
way.
you willfully live in that ignorance? And it's at the expense of so many people's lives.
Well, I always try to understand people, so I kind of understand where he's coming from. If you actually think, if you put yourself in his shoes, he'd have to reanalyze everything he's ever believed in his entire life if what I'm saying is true.
Yeah, but you and I did that.
Sure. No, I'm not making excuses for him. I'm just saying.
Don't be so nice, Jeff.
Yeah, maybe I'm a little too nice. But your other point about feeling alone if you don't have a lot in common with your parents, I've never felt that way. I've always felt like family is just some people in your life that if they're nice to you and if you like talking to them, then you should hang out with them. And if you don't, you should go find some other people that you enjoy being around more. I've never really seen that whole family thing as being super important. I see all of us human beings as one family on this planet. And to limit yourself and just say, oh, well, that guy had sex once and now I'm here, so I have to always, be with him and love him and, all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, if he's a dick, just don't talk to him anymore and just find somebody you do like. It's not that, all these concepts, a lot of people still sort of are thinking a little bit like monkeys, I think.
I think we're programmed into that as much as we're programmed into all the limiting beliefs, which is, you can't step away from your family because, that's just not nice. And this is another way, groupthink, that you can't think for yourself because, until the whole family looks at 9/11 and can see how ridiculous it was, then I can't really agree with that. And if you're going to wait for your whole family, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating, and that's why I told you that I really don't. I on Facebook about 2 years ago, I just deleted everyone. I had old friends, and they all got they thought I was being oh, he's quite successful now, he doesn't want to talk to us. It's like, no, that's not the reason why. It's because you're a bunch of idiots who've never really figured anything out, and it's really frustrating to talk to you. And you believe in all these very violent and immoral things, and you don't even know they're violent and immoral. And so I just deleted all those status people, and all my friends now are all anarchists, they're all libertarian, all freedom lovers.
I don't give people that much credit. I don't actually believe that they're that they haven't worked it out yet. I actually think they're all cowards, and I know that because of how much courage I've had to find in myself to follow this road. And the suffering that I've been through thinking for myself, I understand why people wouldn't want to live that life, but I have to support my womankind, who are otherwise being abused by this ever-increasingly fascist system.
Yeah, you bring up some good points, and I've actually never thought of it as being a real weight or a problem thinking this way. I've always just thought generally this way. I've always searched for truth. That's really been the basis. I'm always just looking for the truth. And I actually do research, which not many people do because they've been trained not to. They're just trained to memorize Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. If you've looked into Lincoln, there's a little bit more to the story than that. And but you know what? And you mentioned that you think they're cowards, and you might be kind of generally right. And I don't like to denigrate people too much, but maybe that's my niceness coming out again. But there's been a big shift I've noticed happening in the last few years, and what it is that most people, for whatever reason, and I think we brought up a lot of the reasons prior to this, they don't like to go away from the group too much. So if the group in generally believes in all these stupid things, most people will not have the courage to say something against it, even if they know that to be true. But there's been a major shift happening in the last few years. I'm starting to see people speaking the truth all the time now. And I've noticed like Forbes magazine is almost an anarchist magazine now. I just read in Huffington Post, or no, what was it? There was some quite liberal magazine that's very popular, had an article saying that the U.S. government is just a hitman, and basically saying the government is just mafia, which it is. But to see, like, people are just saying these things now. And I remember when I first started saying these things, I was extreme.
Yes.
I started something called the Dollar Vigilante about 5 years ago, and I was saying all the same things I'm saying now, for the most part, and people were like, he's extreme. You might like him, you might dislike him, but he's like off, like he's too far. He's just too far. And all I was saying was the government is evil. Central banks are evil. Freedom and peace is the way to prosperity. And people thought this was crazy. And now, and I used to call, like I always say, like prime murderer instead of prime minister and things like that. And now I'm seeing just so many people just saying those things. So I think what's happened is enough people now have started to say these things that more people are feeling more comfortable about actually saying them, and they don't just keep it to themselves as much anymore. And if we get more and more of that happening, we'll see a massive shift happening where it'll actually become, if someone ever came up and said, I really believe that Osama bin Laden did 9/11, they might get laughed and ostracized out of the room anywhere they go in the near future, because this is what happens is once enough people get to this point, then everyone else has the confidence to go there. And then the few people who actually still believe the incorrect information, they'll become the extreme and weirdos and the ostracized ones that we used to be.
Yeah, I can concur with that. I was just on Facebook and there was some post about vaccines, and I was just feeling so happy because about 10 people were saying, yeah, vaccines are great because we'd all be dead without them. And then there were at least 10, if not more than half, the people saying the truth about who's pushing vaccines, who's profiting from them, who's suppressed information about the problems they've caused. And I don't even have to jump in on the argument anymore because there are so many people saying this. When I first started to hear about the true reason for vaccines, about 20 years ago in the early 90s, absolutely only there was so few kooks who could see that, and there was so few places to find information. The internet really wasn't big then, and now, oh my God, the internet has spread and people are talking, and empirical evidence, like people's own truths, is what advances the field, because people communicating all over the world, connecting just so easily, is a really genuine way to bring information into your life. Because you can tell if somebody has integrity or not a lot more easily than you can tell, the integrity of a company, shall we say, or a big pharma or any government. I mean, these days you and I know, and many, many people know the truth behind big pharma and government. It's not for our benefit. But, I'm really excited by the change.
Yeah, there's so much change going on right now. And this is sort of what I do. It's sort of not only my hobby, but my business is paying attention to what's going on and paradigm shifts. And there's massive changes going on. And there's so many funny things to see nowadays. And the internet's changed everything. Because before the internet, the government and the media, which basically worked with the government, and they were all owned by the same people who basically own the government or basically control it. They had total reign on what people thought, and most people believed it. People would actually believe what they saw on CNN and think that was just fact. And now with the internet, it's just changing everything. So I go on a lot of sort of mainstream media websites, and they'll post an article like, "Oh, you should get the new vaccine of the week. Go get your kids all injected and hopped up on mercury and all that kind of stuff. And it only costs $30, and it's very important." And then you read the comments down below, and every single comment, there'll be like hundreds, will all be saying the truth. Like, this is bullshit. These are the facts. And like not one will concur with the article. Wow. And this is on every article on mainstream media sites.
I love that.
How much longer can they last? Like, I don't even know why people even go to these sites anymore. I only go to read the comments. I rarely even read the articles.
Yeah, that's so heartening, isn't it? I can't believe they even let comments be there.
Well, a lot of them have started to turn it off, and that's just going to be the end of them, because that's probably the only reason that most people go there is just to comment.
To find what people really think as well, because often when you look at anything, you want to see what everybody's take is on it as well.
Yeah.
So, when you're saying you've either stepped away from some people, or you have me, no, you've stepped away from some people, or people have stepped away from you. Have any people since changed position over the years? People who are adamantly statist or whatever. Do you know people who've gone, "You know what, Jeff? I'm into that now."
Oh yeah, no, I get that all the time, which is really heartening and really exciting to me. I just 2 days ago, I was on Facebook. I had this friend that we did business about 20 years ago. We don't really talk much. We're not really good friends or anything. But he's been reading a lot of what I've been writing for the last few years. And just yesterday he said, I used to think you were crazy, but now I totally believe in basically everything you're saying. And he hasn't gone the full distance yet, but he said, forget this left-right paradigm. He said, I'm going to go for the Libertarian Party in Canada now. And I was like, okay, that's definitely a good step. And, but I'm sure in a few months he'll just go forget the whole political system. But yeah, I see it all the time. So many people, like I was saying, I was just mentioning that when I used to go to conferences like 5 years ago, I'd sit up there and there'd be like very normal, very not outside of the box people on a panel with me, and they'll just be saying, I think oil's going to go up $10 next year or whatever. And then I'd come in and I'd say something like, this whole system is corrupt and evil. And a lot of people would be shocked. And I'd say things like, we need anarchy in this world. We need to get rid of the states. And people would think I was crazy. I used to be known as the crazy guy. And now most of the panels I go on, people are saying more extreme things than I used to say. And if there is someone who disagrees with me, they usually on the panel will actually apologize to me. They'll say, I'll say something about anti-state, and they'll say, I have to say, I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm not an anarchist. So they're actually apologizing to me because they don't fully believe in what I'm saying. They're actually apologizing now.
Yeah.
And they're actually, they're truthfully apologizing because they know that they're wrong and they know I'm right, but they just can't quite get there in their brains yet.
But
so
they're
actually
on the
apologizing.
way.
Yeah. So there's massive changes happening. It's quite phenomenal to see. I'm actually kind of wondering if when I first started writing The Dollar Vigilante, I was the extreme guy, and now most of the stuff I'm saying you can read in like mainstream, very mainstream news nowadays. Like I saw in Forbes magazine that they're very anarchist now. They say a lot of the same stuff that I used to say 5 years ago. So I'm like, do I have to get more extreme now to even get any attention, or should I just retire happily and just be happy that the world's changing for the better?
Probably not, because you're probably already highly on the radar of a lot of those people, because, I've said it before, and I reckon you could have all the people who publicly speak out about this stuff in an address book. It's not more than 1,000 people that I can find on the internet, and 1,000 that are publicly doing it means millions are privately doing it or on their way researching. I researched for years in secret. I went to so many websites in secret, and I never told anyone I went there, and I never left comments because I didn't want anyone to know that I was questioning my conventional self. But when you have given yourself enough evidence, then you can become a public speaker about these subjects as well.
Yeah, and I think it really makes a big difference to people that if someone says something in public, it makes it actually, it normalizes it. So, you know, if I'm speaking somewhere and I say something like what I usually say, anti-government, anti-state, pro-freedom, that used to be quite extreme. But now, because when I say it, no one boos, no one shakes their head. You know, when Doug Casey used to speak, who's sort of a mentor of mine, he used to speak about these very same things, and he would say a lot of them and actually get booed by half or more of the audience. And that actually told people in the audience who actually agreed with him, I better not say this in public because this is very not appreciated or not condoned sort of language or things to talk about. But now I can say almost anything about truth at almost any conference, and not even one person will even shake their head. Most will be like actually nodding. And so this tells a lot of those people in the audience or who are listening, wow, I can actually say these things in public now. I'm not going to be ostracized or castigated or told I'm crazy. I actually might be told I'm crazy if I don't believe these things. And that's why I was saying, when I get apologized to all the time at these conferences now. It's just funny, like massive change in the last few years. And now, of course, I should just mention that, you know, I go to mostly precious metals, Bitcoin, freedom-related conferences. So it's not like I'm talking in front of a Barack Obama. Like, I'm not opening for Barack Obama at some liberal conference. I'm sure there'd be a lot of
not
booze
this
and stuff. Yeah, that's.
If he wants to get in for a third term, he better think about having you.
Oh, that's changing so much too. Did you see in Europe? He had a speech in Brussels, I believe, at the Hague,
and nobody clapped.
he finished, and you remember when he was first running for president, and he went to Germany, and there was like 300,000 people all cheering. They all fell for the propaganda that he was going to save the world, and then he just went on bombing every country and all that kind of stuff. And now he was at the Hague and he did his speech. It was so funny. You got to look it up on the internet if the people watching haven't seen this. He finishes talking and it's just silence, and you can kind of hear a lot of people kind of laughing and walking away. It's like very quickly this is all just shifting.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's just we're on the precipice. And I used to think it might take 100 years, but it's going to happen. Now I'm thinking it's going to be less than 10.
Yeah, the internet sped everything up. And the thing that he said, and that was right near the end of his speech, and I think that's why everyone started just like didn't clap and just walked away, was he says, in America, we've always believed in the importance of privacy. I couldn't believe that not everyone didn't laugh. Like, I would have been laughing if I was. First of all, I wouldn't go there because I wouldn't even listen to that criminal. But you know, I think it'll get to that point very quickly where people will be just laughing at them and not even showing up. You know, who was it? John Lennon or someone said, "What if they threw a war and no one came?" or something like that. What if they have an election and no one came? You know, so we're getting very quickly to that point, and all these systems are all falling apart now. And that was sort of what I started talking about with. Even if people didn't change dramatically, these systems are all going to collapse under their own weight. But we're having these systems collapsing right now, plus people are actually waking up, and they actually have access to information and can communicate. And people like John Kerry just recently said it's getting really hard to govern people with this internet. And it's true. You can't, you know, government, the roots of the word are govern, which is control, and ment, which is mind. It's mind control. It's a way of controlling people. And you can't do that if they actually have access to information. So I'm really surprised they haven't turned the internet off yet.
Sorry, and their own will, yeah. You can't control people who have their own will, which I like. So in what ways do you comply with or defy government?
Well, I never comply. I always defy.
High five!
But
you know, I'm going to jail in Australia for the Anarchist interview I did with Hugh last week as soon as that goes up. So, but I need to finish my book, so I'm not too worried.
Yeah, that's the way I think too. Is if they do kidnap me and put me in a cage, I'll finally finish my book too. So, you know, either way, they can't stop us. But really, to me, the government and the statist mindset, the collectivist mindset, is it's just going away so quickly. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about before you said jail? I had a really good comment. You asked me a question. What was how do I defy or I mostly just ignore government, and if government does get in my way somewhere, I find a way around it. But I don't obsess about defying the government. To me, the government isn't even real.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. There is no government. You can't point at government. Where's the government? Is that building the government? Government is just a bunch of people in costumes, listening to other people in costumes, committing massive crimes. And so I don't want anything to do with any of that. So I just ignore them and hope they go away. And if they do get in my face, usually through the police or through some sort of tax or whatever, I just find a way to get around it. And I find that if you just sort of ignore them and don't treat them as though they even have any right to exist, it's almost like I've been thinking a lot about this. A lot of those vampire movies, you have to actually invite the vampire into the house, and that's what happens with governments. The cops in the U.S. especially will come to your door and they'll say, "Hey, we're coming in. We're gonna check your house. You might have some plants like marijuana." And people go, okay, and it's almost like the vampire. They actually need your permission at some level to do a lot of the things they do, and if you just don't give them that, they almost just disappear. It's almost like they almost turn into dust.
Yeah.
And the more the people realize that, they'll just go away. Like we could actually see Barack Obama 10 years from now working as a janitor in some like crappy school somewhere. Like it really could happen that way, because so many people, if they just sort of wake up and realize what's going on, they'll just go, oh, this guy's at worst just not a good thing, or at best not a good thing, and at worst he's a criminal and a thief and a murderer, and a lot of people say, well, in order to bring freedom back into the world, we have to have a violent revolution. I don't think so. It can be all totally nonviolent. Just ignore them and they'll just go away. And it's happening now, like what happened with Barack Obama in Europe. That's a huge change from 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And people are just almost ignoring them and laughing at them. And once that happens, it's over.
My friend said to me the other day, look, if you just go and get your license, you can borrow my car. And I was like, to me, that's like telling me to go and apply to Santa Claus for a license. It's like, I do not defer to the government for permission to travel, like I can't do it anymore. I'm at that stage. I'm too far gone. But not everyone.
Oh, it's totally ridiculous. I just saw a news article. Some woman got put in jail because she didn't pay a $5 dog permit license in the U.S. So you need permission to have a dog in the U.S. now, and some people still walk around and go, "We live in the land of the free."
I know, and if you have a dog,
do you have a dog without permission?
You have to carry a plastic bag and pick up poo. It's like in the history of the world, poo goes into the ground. It's just poo. It's good. It's good for the ground. And everyone's like, oh, well, you wouldn't say that if you lived in Paris or whatever. It's like, well, don't live in Paris if there's too many dogs. If you're a dog lover, you'll step around the shit. But the idea that they can make you put a plastic bag on your hand every time you take your dog for a walk, I don't know. It's not like that in Acapulco yet, is it?
No, not at all. And not that there's anything wrong with cleaning up if you make a mess somewhere or anything like that, but the whole idea of making it actually a rule or a law, which is backed up by the use of violent force or extortion. Fines, is totally wrong, and actually takes the humanity out of humans, because if you don't have any of those laws, if you live in an area and it has like 50 dogs, and this guy's got 50 dogs, and they all come and they all poo in your driveway every day, you might have a conversation with that person and say, can you not have your dogs poo in my driveway? And then you'd have to actually have a conversation. And if the guy actually goes, no, I like them pooing in your driveway, well, then you can do whatever you want to stop him. It's your property. And that's fine. But that actually creates an actual conversation between human beings rather than adhering. Like I just saw so many people are so enslaved to this mindset now. I just saw yesterday there was a riot. Well, it actually wasn't a riot. This basketball team, a university basketball team had lost in Arizona. And a bunch of the students were all drunk and unhappy, and they all sort of gathered in this one place. And it was a little bit chaotic or whatever, but no major problems. And actually everyone who was quoted in the news said there was really no major problems until the cops showed up in riot gear. And then it got just violent and crazy, mostly the cops beating people up. And there's a video, actually, you should check it out. This girl was just walking along. She wasn't even near this crowd. And this cop came running up like he was a linebacker and just demolished her. He was like 250 pounds. This 100-pound girl, just like he hit her so hard, like with his body, like he tackled her, that she went flying about 5 feet. And a bunch of the people who saw it got angry and upset, which is a very normal thing to do. And one of the persons goes, "Call the police." That's how enslaved these people are. It's like a cop just like, assaulted somebody. Call the police. It's like, no, like assault the cop, he just, but no one would ever do that in the U.S. They're just so trained to respect authority, and we'll take them to court. Yeah, we'll take them to government court, and let the government decide if this guy did the right thing or wrong thing. And of course, he works for the government, and the judge works for the government, and the prosecutor works for the government,
and the defender.
And it costs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. And that's a great system.
Okay, now I want to ask you a little philosophical sidetrack. How do you feel about life after death?
Yeah, that's obviously very one of the most important questions about philosophy and what is life, right? I think before you talk about life after death, the biggest question is, what is life? And I have no idea. I've been thinking about it for years, doing tons of research. There's really no factual information that I can find about what exactly life is or how we're here. It makes no sense. I love people who believe in the Big Bang Theory. They go, "Oh, I can't believe you believe in God. You're crazy." And you say, "Well, what do you?" I'm actually agnostic. I don't believe in anything. I haven't seen enough facts or truth to really lead me to believe that there is for sure one thing. And the people will go, "Well, if you don't believe in God, what do you believe in?" He'll go, "Well, I believe in the Big Bang. Of course, that's scientific." It's like the Big Bang. The Big Bang is religion for people who believe in science. It makes no sense. Oh, there was nothing, and then all of a sudden it just blew up, a massive explosion, and then there was everything.
And a tiny everything was in a bucket, apparently. And I used to say to my dad when I was about 6. Yeah, but who made the bucket of stuff that got blown into everything? And then he'd be like, "Just shut up and have your cheese."
Yeah, the best theory, if you made me, gamble at all right now on the best theory of life, the best theory I've come up with yet is that it's an incredibly advanced computer game. And the reason I say that is because everything does appear to be quite encoded. For example, the Fibonacci. Almost everything in nature and everything in life actually is all very similar the way it's been coded. And it's almost like it's a code, like it was actually designed by somebody or something. And so if I had to guess, I'd say that's my best guess, but I don't know what the point of this game is, and I don't know who gets the highest score or whatever. Maybe the whole point of the game is just to play the game. But I don't know. A lot of people say they're scared of death. I've gone through a few fairly close experiences. I sank a boat and all that kind of stuff off the coast of El Salvador, and I've come close a few times to maybe thinking I might die. And I've always looked forward to it. I always go, "Wow, finally I'm going to see what happens after you die," and maybe nothing happens, and then if that's the case, then then who cares? Because I don't know. I'm just gone. No big deal. But if something happens, it'll be like the most amazing thing to see what the hell this is all about. So actually kind of like a lot of people fear death. I enjoy life and I'm living my life, and I'm not going to kill myself because a lot of people like me tend to die unexpectedly, and they always say he committed suicide. I'm not planning on committing suicide, but I don't fear death. I actually look forward to it. I think that it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens.
Okay, so how do you survive? How do you make your money?
Well, I'm kind of lucky. I don't know if lucky is a good word, but I'm quite a lot of the things I believe in. I just started, like, for example, the Dollar Vigilante about 5 years ago, and my whole point of it mostly was I just wanted to get this information out there, and I wanted to get people access to really good, truthful information and about what's really going on in the world. But it grew so much that so I would say a lot of things like, you should really just get out of the Western world. I've been to about 100 countries. I've lived all over the world. I'm currently mostly living in Mexico, and I just say, just as you've seen and said, living outside of a lot of these Western countries is such a better life. It's just night and day. And like what you said in Canberra, just seeing the people on the street. I see that every time I go to the U.S., every time I go to Canada. It's so depressing. And so I just say a lot of things like that, and then people will say, well, where should I go? So I've started up a lot of side businesses of just helping people to do the things that I'm suggesting that they might want to do. So I'll say things like, you should get your money outside of the Western financial system. It's going to collapse. And they say, well, where should I put it? And I say, well, you should get at least an offshore bank account. And they say, how do I do that? So I set up TDV offshore. And then I say, you should if you're American especially, you should get a second passport, because they're closing the doors on Americans now. And then people will say, well, how do I get a second passport? So I started up tdvpassports.com, which is now pretty much the biggest second citizenship company on earth, and numerous other businesses like that. I'm sort of an entrepreneur, so when I see opportunities...
You're such an inspiration.
Well, most people would be like this if they didn't go to schools, because schools, you might notice in government schools, they don't have an entrepreneurship 101 class. They don't want you to actually do your own business. They want you to work for the major big companies that basically run the government and then all that kind of stuff.
And make you pay tax.
Yeah, and of course, that's another big part of it. And I've known a number of homeschooled and unschooled kids now. And man, these kids, 10 years old, they've got all their own little businesses. Even my son, just the other day, he's 9, and he really wants, it's coming out soon, Minecraft for Xbox One. And I've seen this game. I've heard a lot about it, and it's an amazing game. It's one of the best educational tools, and they don't even know they're learning while they're doing it, because they're having so much fun, which is the way it should be, and not like schools. And I said, wow, that's like $80 or 1,000 pesos. And he said, well, how do we get 1,000 pesos? I said, you better find something that some people want and offer it to them and make a profit on it. And he started thinking, and he came up with a few ideas. He thought about it for about an hour, and he came down. He said, I got an idea how we're going to get some money. And I said, what? And he said, I've got a lot of these stuffed animals and stuff, and I love them, and I still want them. But I'm starting to feel like I don't need them as much anymore, because I'm 9 now.
Oh,
so maybe in a year or two, I won't really want them anymore. Maybe we could sell them. And I said, yeah, that's pretty good idea. And he goes, but he actually asked me the question. It was so cute. He goes, but I don't understand how you sell things. And I said, well, it's pretty simple. I'll kind of give you some information, but really just go to your school with a bunch of these stuffed animals and just see if anyone wants them. And he was like, yeah, we can make a lot of money. He's like, I'll sell all my clothes. I'm like, don't sell all your clothes. but that's how his mind's thinking. And he talked to a public school indoctrinated 9-year-old, and they're just like, how are you doing? They're like, good. And it's all cutting his wrists and keying cars and stuff,
because at 9 they're so intelligent but they're not using their own intelligence. They're just learning by rote. Like they're telling you they can read, but they've just remembered the book by rote, whatever.
Which is
awesome. It's all about
making
the teacher happy. And my nieces and nephews go to a school, and it's like, if you make the teacher happy, you get a green band. And when you get 5 green bands, then you get a red band. And once you've got a red band, you can trade that in for 2 blue bands. It's like, okay, so if you just keep towing the line, you go through all these colored bands, and they've got you right where they want you at the end. It's so disgusting.
Yeah, I saw a poll, and they actually polled kids in every grades in school, and they just asked them one question. They said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you? And when they were in grade 5, it was like 9 out of 10 said they're curious. Every single grade, it went down by 1. So by the end, in grade 12, they said, how curious are you? And it was like 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. It was like 2 because it just drives it all out of them. They just get so. They're doing things they don't want to do. They're just being forced to be, respect authority and to behave and not to stand out from the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And I actually saw this one thing on the internet. This teacher, this kid on a test or something in class. It was in class, and the teacher said, "What's longer, a mile or a kilometer?" And the kid went a mile. And the teacher said, no, that's wrong. And the kid said, no, I think I'm right. And the teacher actually sent a note home with the kid saying, your son needs to respect authority a lot more, because he said that a mile is longer than a kilometer, which is true. But I had said that a kilometer was longer than a mile, and he didn't accept that. This is the kind of stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it's absolute tragedy. Oh, Jeff, look, as much as I love listening to long videos myself, I'm trying to keep this, I'm trying to not keep it too long, even though I know some people love to just listen to conversations. But I'm going to wrap it up in a minute. But before I do, I want you to tell everyone about Anarchast and about the Dollar Vigilante, about your sites, things you've written, anything they can get, the TDV passports and all of that. Just give us all your details.
Sure. Anarchast, we didn't talk too much about, but that's a podcast I do, a video podcast on YouTube that I interview anarchists, and I just interviewed you. It'll be going up actually today. And I've done it. I've done, and then you'll have to go to jail.
Yeah, but people who really love me will love me whether I'm in jail or not. All 6 of them.
Yeah, so I've interviewed like 115 people now. It's amazing how the time flies, and almost every single one, it is quite good. Like there's always amazing information from these people who are all anarchists. And so if you're into that, and especially if you don't fully know what anarchy is, and if you don't fully necessarily believe in total freedom and some state, check out some of the Anarchast episodes, and definitely check out the one with Elissa. So that's just anarchast.com, and then I have dollarvigilante.com, and we have actually a free blog on there, and I write every day. I kind of I work too much, but actually I don't think of it as work, so I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't doing that. That's right. I love what I do. So we write every day about a lot of the topics that we talked about today, and from there you can find everything else about me. So that's basically it.
Oh, that's wonderful. And now for my my favorite question, which I always ask guys when I go out on a date, and it's probably why I'm single. Tell me something about yourself you don't want me to know. Oh, you don't have to. It's a terrible pressure for me to put on you after all that love you've just given.
Well, it's funny for me because I've always lived my life in a way that I always tried to just put everything about me out there. And a lot of people actually said that it's quite dangerous for me to do that. They say, you can't be talking about, you get around government, you don't pay taxes, all legally, by the way. There's lots of legal ways to do it. Although if there wasn't legal ways, I'd do it illegally.
And there's lawful ways, always. Because the law is illegal.
Yeah, so because of that, I don't really have too much that people don't know or that I wouldn't want people to know. I can't really think of too much that I wouldn't want people to know.
That's what I like about you, actually. You do put it all out there, and it's why you're one of my heroes and one of my teachers, because you do lay it out there. And, in this past week, since we did the interview for Anarchast, I have had a few thoughts whilst being in the shower or whatever, and I've thought, maybe I should contact Jeff and tell him, don't put that stuff up about me not paying $60,000 worth of parking fines, because I'm just asking for trouble. And in my life, whenever I get to something that scares me, I just make myself walk through it and make myself go through it. And so far, so good, I think somehow the universe has enabled me to continue on with doing what I'm doing, despite the fact that I haven't obeyed all of what I consider illegal laws. And so that's one of the reasons why I share that. And if I do end up getting in trouble because I've publicly taken a stand and told people in the world, then, I'm prepared to go down as a martyr. My mum's a martyr. It's probably in my blood. So, I'll be a martyr for a good cause. And, it will hopefully make, me saying I haven't paid $60,000 worth of parking fines in 10 years on that being on the internet. Millions of people are going to see it, and hundreds of thousands are just going to stop paying as well. And they're going to use the Elissa Hawke defense. They're going to go, but what about Elissa Hawke? She didn't pay. And so we're all helping each other by being honest and by standing up to what we think is not right.
Plus, not to mention, 10 years from now, that $60,000 won't buy you a Big Mac in Australia, so it won't be a big deal either. And actually, one final point that I wouldn't mind making is that you brought up a good point that just go out there and be yourself. Say what you think is true. I actually think that's a really good way of doing things. And the way I kind of look at the sort of the evils of statism and collectivism and the beauties and the wonderful things of freedom and being a freedom and a person who's trying to spread the truth is I kind of look at them as like darkness and as truth as the light. And, if you have a very dark room and you shine a light in it, it just lights up the whole room. There's no more darkness. But you can't take darkness in a container to a park in a sunny day and open it and everything's dark. I think the light, makes the dark go away. So I think the more that you're open, the more truthful you are, the more you're trying to do the best that you can to wake people up and try to help humanity in the best way possible, the less chance that they can really affect you. It's sort of like the vampire thing that I was mentioning. I really don't think they can come near us. It's almost like we're protected as long as we're open and truthful and honest. Now, I'm not saying that they can't come after us or whatever, but I think they almost, it's this weird sort of an energy thing that they can't really come near us. We're actually almost protected in a sense. And, I could get shot by the CIA tomorrow. That's totally possible. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think the more that we just are out there and truthful and honest and liberated and that sort of a thing, that they can't really come to us. The real power is in just controlling the other people who don't do those things and submitting to their authority.
Yes, and the longer I've been doing this, the more I realize that it is an energy thing, and fear, it's either fear or love, and love trumps fear. Fear is only a part of love, it's maybe called its opposite, but I'm really happy to hear you say that because I feel the same way.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the two dichotomies are love and hate. But it's actually love and fear. Hate comes from fear. So the more fearful you are, you go to the sort of the darker side, and that's what government use. They use fear. They try to tell you, and that's what I was talking about. This Purge movie. They try to make it sound like without the government that you're all going to die, and they use fear. And the more that we can get people away from fear and more towards love, an actual faith in humanity and a trust in your fellow man. And I'm not saying you trust everybody or anything, but being open to trusting people. And let them, if they do something bad, that's fine. And then you can, you don't want to deal with that person anymore, but actually being open to people. So it's more about openness and being open to the world. And I think it's a lot of stuff changing. A lot more people are opening up and a lot, I think things are going to go very well in the next few years.
My brother was suggesting to me that if we had anarchy, then people would be climbing his fence to rape his children. And I'm like, so if there's no police, are you going to climb the fence and rape someone's children? And he looked at me like I was insane, and I could see his mind starting to tick over. So, I think if we start to learn to love and trust ourselves and be our best self, then we can only hope for the best for ourselves. But anything's better than living by law. You must live by principle. For me, I must live by principle. I don't guide myself by laws because I don't want to end up being a Nazi prison camp overseer. I don't want to do what I'm told to do. I want to do what I know is right in my heart.
Yeah, and the only real principle that I have is the non-aggression principle. So I live by the principle of never aggressing against other people. It goes back to the old Jesus golden rule thing that a lot of people have forgotten now. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And if you live your life that way, and everyone lived their life that way, we'd have a much better world. There'd be no government, there'd be no central banks, there'd be no collectivism, and it'd be a much better world.
Yeah, okay. Jeff, it's been wonderful chatting. I love chatting to you. I hope we stay in touch. We will, I'm sure. And maybe I'll interview you again in a year and we'll see how far everything's come.
Yeah, it's always great. Every time we talk, we've been talking. I normally don't do videos this long, but we did one on Anarchast too. It's always great talking to you. And maybe you can do the next one from the beach here in Acapulco.
Oh, don't joke about it. I cried for 5 hours tonight because I don't belong here. I'm trapped here by financial circumstances for as long as it takes until I can see myself out of this little mental prison that I'm in, which is, it's going by the day. And, I'm just trying to decide now if I'm going to Hawaii, Panama, or Mexico first, or wherever. And I'm only going to Hawaii for a holiday on the way to Panama or Mexico because it's the cheapest way to get there, believe it or not. And I've never seen Hawaii, so I want to go there. But I'm not into America. I don't want to go there if I can avoid it. But, Hawaii's Hawaii, so I might stop there. But yeah, I'm really keen. If I get to Mexico, I'm definitely coming to Acapulco just to check out I need to pick your brains a bit, because I have like I told you before, I'm just hopeless with, I'm not much of an entrepreneur in the sense, and I could learn a little of that from you, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, if you come here, let me know.
And Gates Gulch. Tell me about Gates Gulch for a minute before we finish.
Galt's Gulch.
Galt's Gulch, sorry.
Yeah, that's, again, another thing that came along. So I was telling people to get out of the West. You've seen it. You used to live in Mexico, and you told me how much you loved it. And you actually told me you're an entrepreneur. What you told me about what you're doing that's entrepreneurial. You're teaching just yoga classes and stuff like that. That's entrepreneurialism. It's small scale, but
I've always been self-employed. I don't care to pile money up. Once I have like a bit of money, I just spend it, and then I go, oh no, I'm useless and poor again. And then I feel really small until I bring in the next creative idea that brings in the next thing, But
yeah,
I do
you might want to save a little bit.
Yeah, you do. You must save some and never ever spend it, right?
Well, I've always lived by I've always tried to be productive every day of my life, and that doesn't necessarily mean making money. It means improving myself one way or another every single day. And it might be something small, just learning some small thing on one day or whatever, but every day improving. And that also, because I'm entrepreneurial, I'm generally always producing things. So you brought up Galt's Gulch. So that was another thing that came around, because people were asking me, where should I go? Because I totally agree with you. It's horrible living in the West now. It's just so depressing, and you can't really get ahead, and it's just a police state, and it's just not good, not a healthy environment. And so, in Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, it was very similar to today in that, in the book, was that the government had become so oppressive and taking all your money, and you couldn't get ahead, that a lot of the people who were producers just went to this one place that happened to be in Colorado. This was back in 1950 when the U.S. was still a decent place. And they just got away from it all, and they stopped producing, and they just went to live together. And so that Galt's Gulch, that's where they went. It's called Galt's Gulch. Is very well known. Atlas Shrugged is one of the most read books on earth, and it's actually Ayn Rand has been one of the biggest people who's been awakening people to the idea of freedom and liberty, and how the world should be. And we initially found in Chile a place that is an amazing place, and started one there. And I think we're going to do a lot more of them all over the world. I've been looking in Honduras, because they actually have free trade zones now, which I think is going to completely change that country. Also looking at Colombia, that's a huge, going to be huge in the next decade, in my opinion. It's really booming now. A lot of Latin American countries. And then over in Asia, I really like Cambodia. It's a very free market place. It's very cheap. It's unbelievably cheap, but it's actually getting more expensive by the month right now, because it's booming, because there's really no government at all that has any effect on anything in day-to-day life. There's really no regulations, no taxes, no nothing, and it's just turning into Hong Kong like overnight. So I'm thinking about doing something there. But that was the whole concept, because a lot of people are looking to leave, but they don't know where to go, and they'd like to be around like-minded people. So a lot of the people who listen to me or subscribe to my newsletter or anything like that, they're all very similar. They're a lot like us. They're all libertarian or anarchist. They all know what's going on. They're quite informed. I was going to say educated, but education's kind of bad, especially the way that people think about education today. They think they have to go to a school to get educated.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I've started doing things like that, just starting up, because I've lived all over the world, and I know that there's so many amazing places that you could go and live and prosper and do well, and it's so much healthier. And a lot of people don't know that. I'm lucky that I've been to about 100 countries, so I've seen that almost any place outside of the West is better, and because of seeing all those places, I know some of the really good ones. So that's generally what I've been doing.
And, a lot of people go, oh, but I don't want to be away from my family and this and that. And I just think to myself, if I can build a hostel on a piece of land in Mexico for $100,000, and that's probably 50 grand more than I need to spend, then, to have the same thing in Australia would cost me $1 million or $5 million. And so that's a lot of savings that I'm making on that investment. And that's a lot of airfares to and from. I could come to Australia every week and back with that kind of savings. So people have to be aware that different economies make everything possible, really.
Yeah, I find it bizarre. Sorry, we keep talking. I find that we can talk forever, but just briefly that I find it bizarre that so many people are still living like medieval serfs. They never go like 5 miles away from where they're born their entire
they only
lives.
Have two paid weeks of leave, Jeff.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the whole system, and including things like mortgages, which are meant to basically keep you in one place for like 30 years.
And they have like their nice dinner set in their cupboard in that house that they can't leave because, they don't want to put the dinner set in a box and put it in storage because,
Well, it's just bizarre, though. We live in the day and age with airplane travel, so you can travel anywhere in the world within about 15 hours, or at most 24 hours, which if you told someone that 200 years ago, they would have died to have been in your shoes. These explorers who were just dying all the time, and they had scurvy, and it takes them like 3 months just to like get anywhere, or 3 years sometimes. And you have things like the internet with Skype. And one just funny story is I had a good friend. He's bit of a status, so I don't talk to him too much anymore. And we used to talk all the time. And I was living in Thailand and Hong Kong at the time, and he was in Canada. And we talk almost every day on Skype. Not every day. I'm not one of those kind of people who talk to my friends every day, but like quite often, every week on Skype, or every couple times a week. And I was in Vancouver, which is where he lives, and I was just on a stopover, and I decided to go into town for some sushi. I didn't even think to call anyone. I was just like, I'm going to go eat some sushi and get back to the airport because I only got a couple hours. And I actually saw him on the street, and we actually both passed each other. We hadn't seen each other in about 3 or 4 years, and we were good friends at the time. And we both just sort of said, hey, how's it going? And he said, good, and I said, good. And we both kept walking, and then we both turned around and said, we haven't seen each other in like 3 or 4 years, but we didn't even realize it because we've been talking every day via Skype. It's almost the same thing.
Exactly. It is. If you open your heart to somebody, the smallest message is more important than hanging out in the same house with people who don't open up in any way.
Yeah, so the people just really need to expand their ideas of the possibilities, and again, it's fear. A lot of people have fear. They watch their media and their government's travel alerts. Acapulco's always on the travel alerts, which is hilarious because it's awesome here. And actually, Doug Casey has a great quote. He says if he's ever going to travel anywhere, he always goes to wherever the U.S. government has a travel alert, because first of all, it's going to be way cheaper because there's not going to be a lot of tourists, be way less crowded, and third of all, he knows just from looking at history that most of the time there's actually usually no problems there at all. It's just all propagated and propaganda, and the media, and that's what the media does is every night people watch these things and they just come on with this fear and problems and crime and death. And it makes it feel like the whole world's dangerous, but it's actually not the case whatsoever. And actually, my dad's a great example of that. He used to be he was like an arm wrestling champion. He has arms like this. He's like 70, bench presses like 300 pounds still. He used to have like handlebar mustache. He used to drive a motorcycle around with no helmet. He was just like your typical, just badass guy. And after he retired, he started watching the hourly news on the hour. And after a few years, he was so scared to leave his house. And I actually told him, I said, hey, you should come down to Mexico. And he goes, oh, I don't think I can do that. And I said, why? He goes, oh, it's too dangerous. And this guy's huge. Like, he still could just beat up almost anyone he wants. Like, and I was like, are you serious? Like, oh my God, he's changed so much. And I actually had a friend came here, not a very good friend, but a friend of a friend. And he's typical Canadian, watches the nightly news and all that. And they were here for a bachelor party, and he didn't want to come down because he heard it was so dangerous. And so he was here. We were all talking, and he's like 6'2" and about 200 pounds, big guy. And he pulls me to the side. He goes, hey, later tonight I have to take a taxi back to the hotel. Do you think it's safe? And I just looked up at him like this big guy, and I went, what do you think they're going to do? Rape you? Yeah. People have been turned into such fearful, cowering. It's just unbelievable. It's all because of what they're told, and they're just fear.
And ego. Hold on to your body at all costs.
Yeah, I need to get back to Canada because I want to pay all those taxes for the rest of my life, and then maybe at the very end I can retire and get my Social Security check and
sit in front of the TV and get more scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Jeff. Well, shit, 1 hour and 22. That's awesome.
Oh man,
we could talk forever. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Let's do it again some other time.
Yeah, and I'll be in touch. I promise you.
Great.
Look, I'm going to cut it off, okay? So we'll
okay. I'll turn off mine too.
We'll chat soon. Thanks a lot.